Hi everyone, Todd here, internalarchitect.com. And in this video, I'm going to talk about living in medical limbo, is what I like to call it, where you're just kind of, there's a lot of time that goes on in between a lot of different aspects and a lot of different things. So I'm going to touch on a couple points that really has been on my mind, especially since I've been in this medical limbo for the last in between each treatment and then leading up into everything now. But before I begin, please hit subscribe down below and hit the bell for notifications so you know when I put out a new video. So I call this like living in limbo or living in medical limbo because there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of difficulty in figuring out what treatment is going to be. Sure, you hear about chemotherapy and radiation, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. That's really just kind of, you know, and really that's a great analogy because, there's if you ever seen an iceberg or seen some of the memes for icebergs, you see like just that little bit is sticking out of the top of the water, right? Of an iceberg. And then down below in the depths of the ocean is, the other 90% of what goes on with that iceberg. And that's pretty much the same for, cancer and going through all this treatment and all the meetings and the specialists and there's just so many facets and so many different balls to juggle through all this that it's really hard to put a grasp on it. And that's how I've been feeling lately, especially with after my last treatment. I had an allergic reaction. I've actually talked a little bit about this in previous videos, and because of that, I've been, it kind of throws a wrench into everything, and it really makes it kind of hard because we had set us a treatment regimen in place that we were going to follow and we were going to do, and that was that. Turns out that because I had an allergic reaction to the treatment, to the chemotherapy that specifically goes after the lymphoma, it changed the entire course of what we're going to do next, and essentially having to pivot into a different direction. And so because of that, we've been having to wait. Since I was re-diagnosed, there's been a lot of waiting around altogether. I mean, we move pretty quick on stuff, but there's still just that amount of time where you're just waiting on doctors to talk to each other or oncologists to talk to each other, and scheduling and meeting. It's a little bit of all the above because, testing, port placements to blood work to a little bit of everything, scans, PET scans, CT scans, there's so many pieces and parts. So they're trying to get as much information as they can, but you just kind of like, I just wish this could kind of happen faster. And that time in between, you just really are it's hard because your mind is racing. You're really having a hard time under dealing with just the pure amount of waiting that goes on with all this, right? And because of that, and that's the reason why I call this like waiting and living in limbo, because there's just it's just that tough. And I put 4 things down here on my little notes here. Is, the first one is scheduling. You're just trying to figure out the scheduling. The doctors are all busy. There's a lot of people that have cancer, and they all, there's multiple oncologists throughout, the state or even the country, and they're all, interconnected in a weird way. But, because there's so many people, there's just a lot of need for this, and that's why they are so busy. It's actually, I kind of, in a weird way, feel bad for them now, not because, they're not, they're making so much money and stuff like that. It's just, man, it's just a tough, that's got to be a tough life, just, constantly dealing with just all the sick people, so it kind of makes you wonder a little bit about, the doctor's Hippocratic oath and really trying to do something to, really solve this problem, So it's kind of a weird thing, but scheduling is always tough because you might have to wait weeks to meet with your oncologist, which is pretty tough. Fortunately, in my case, because of where I'm at, things kind of happen a little bit quicker because of that. So, and it's either that or it's because I have decent insurance, so they can get me in because they can, and once you do meet with your oncologist, then you're trying to figure out what the course of action is and trying to understand a little bit. Fortunately, for those of you that are new to the cancer world and figuring this out, this is tough because you don't, there's a lot of fear that's going on. You don't know what's happening. You don't know why. You just know that you feel ill and you just want to get better, right? And because of that, now you have to wait because you meet with your oncologist. You start figuring out. You go through all the testing. You start figuring out where your staging is, and just what's the course of action? What's the treatment going to be like? And so there you might have a couple weeks there trying to figure this out. So you got a couple weeks in trying to schedule, and then you have a couple weeks in your course of action trying to figure out exactly what it is that you're going to be doing, and what kind of chemotherapy or radiation or both or immunotherapy or or whatever whatever your course of treatment is, and trying to work with your doctor in that. And then there's just making sure you understand all this too, and then there's also all the time in between treatments that go on. You're dealing, once you, like with chemotherapy, you end up getting an infusion. You go through a week or so of just absolutely feeling like shit, and then you start to come out of the fog and the haze, and you start kind of getting back into the swing of it, and you start doing that. And that's actually a really critical time to really start working on getting yourself back as quick as possible and doing things that are keeping you active. So I found that the more that I actually work on getting out of that fog faster, I mean, your body's going to just, it's going to take the chemotherapy, it's going to do what it's going to do. And then once you start coming out of this fog, and if you can make it happen faster, it's so much better for you in the long run, because then you can kind of get a little bit back to, I don't even want to say normal life, because there's no real normal after you've been diagnosed. It's just kind of back to a routine again. And then you can kind of get prepared and get your mind in a good spot before you actually do your next course of treatment. So that's kind of, there's this time. So, and that's what's nice is, if you're able to keep yourself busy after treatment, it helps kind of deal with the limbo. It helps keep your mind going, and you stop dwelling on a lot of the what ifs and the difficult questions that come up while you're thinking about and going through treatment. And then, the fourth one is like, there's the unforeseen challenges that go on that throw wrenches into the scheduling and into the planning and everything else. And that's been the toughest one for me, because once I had the allergic reaction, next thing you know, I'm like, well, what's next? What does this mean? I'm already, because of where I'm at, and because this is, I having a reoccurrence, I'm kind of starting, like, if you're to take treatment, right, from the very beginning to the very end, right in the middle is kind of where I'm starting again. The first bit of treatment was what I did when I was originally diagnosed 10 years ago actually. I've been in remission for almost 9. And I ended up doing all that up until August or whatever. And then we started at this point, and now we're doing this little bit. And this point here and this point here is like the beginning and then the last available treatment that you can get. So, there's this point here. So when I had that allergic reaction, it really changed kind of the course of action, and it kind of puts me closer to what the last bit of treatment that I can do for this before there's nothing else for me to do. So that's kind of that throws a weird wrench into the entire mindset of, of going through treatment and going through everything else. So, these unforeseen challenges, they can take a toll on you also, because next thing you know, you're talking with your oncologist, maybe a specialist. They're talking a little bit, trying to figure out what's next, and then you're trying to deal with, the scheduling of that whole side of it, and then just the whole entire process just gets drawn out a little bit further. I'm fortunate in a regard, because when I did my PET scan, I saw a huge reduction in the lymphoma, so I have that going for me. And it looks like my course of action next is going to be radiation. I don't know anything about radiation, and I'm going to get to that. I'm going to start learning about that here, like essentially now, just so I can get caught up and really wrap my head around the entire thing. But yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, when the unforeseen stuff happens, then you got to pivot, and then the course of direction can go off in a completely different tangent. And that's kind of what happened with me. And for the last about week and a half, 2 weeks since my PET scan, it's been just kind of waiting, finally setting appointments, getting me in to see my transplant team, and then just having an open conversation with my oncologist, and we're just, I feel good. I feel like it's the right direction, but just all the time waiting has been really difficult, and it's just not easy, So all that time waiting, you gotta, for me, I'm just trying to do everything I can to keep myself busy and keep my head busy. So I've been working probably more than I should. I'm probably going to start scaling back my hours, but I might be taking a whole month off of work here to do all this radiation. So it's kind of it's a hit in the pocketbook also too. So there's, then there's all the fear of like all the financial burden that goes on too. I'm actually going to hit another video here soon about all this, because there's a lot of options for people out there to kind of deal with the financial side of this also. And I'm taking as much advantage as I can, because I want to just make sure that this time around I don't get hit so bad with so much debt. And that's the other, that'll be for another video. But yeah, those are the kind of the things, and that's why I want to talk about this, because there's just so much time that you spend just waiting on stuff, and it's really difficult, because you're just, you need to be in a good mindset. You need to be in a strong growth mindset to be able to really work through these challenges, and then realize that, I have a lot of other things that I can be working on. You keep your mind busy in those ways, just so that you can deal with, life during, regular life as you're going through cancer. So that's kind of my thought. That's what I have to kind of give you guys today, because I think it's really important for you all to understand that you really need to learn patience, and you need to be able to take that and kind of let it go, let some small things roll off your back, and not try to worry about shit. And it's really, really hard, because you just, we live in this day and age of instant information and instant gratification, where we want all this stuff so fast. We want information, we want our results yesterday, and that's just not the case. It's just a lot of waiting. And it's I don't like using the word balance anymore, because there's just so many avenues and so many things that go on. Even when cancer isn't 100% on my mind, I'm thinking about work, I'm thinking about you guys, I'm thinking about the things that are really the most important to me, and making sure that I can continue doing this, and just living my life too at the same time. So there's trying to keep the frustrations down, trying to keep the mind busy, and trying to just be proactive in allowing the time needed to let all this stuff sort itself out, let appointments happen, let information roll in when it needs to. And that's the toughest thing. And that's why I call this living in limbo, because there's just a lot of waiting, unfortunately, that goes along with it. So yeah, thank you for listening. I really appreciate your time and energy into this. And if you have any questions, hit me in the comment section below, and I will answer them as soon as I can. And, again, just thank you for your time and energy into watching the videos, and I will see you on the next one.